Hello and welcome to another video. So, as you may notice already, as soon as I pretty much pressed record, we're doing the updated tier list. So this is something that we essentially want to keep updating any changes because hero changes are not always what impacts the game. Any new runes coming out or any other heroes coming out would obviously push people up and down, who takes priority and so on. We've had Doris release since back in October, I believe, and we recently had Lucia that released. So what I thought I'll do is essentially show you the placements for them. Of course, Lucia I mentioned before, but not Lucia, sorry, Doris I mentioned before, but Lucia is obviously brand new. I believe that Global still doesn't have Lucia, probably till reset today, so or yesterday, depends when I post this. So what I'm going to do is essentially run through, as I did before, the whole tier list. So if, for example, it's not a mage or a priest, it's going to be generally pretty much the same. But obviously, I'm going to slot in those Doris ones and sort of discuss certain heroes that maybe I have more knowledge on now than I did before. So we'll start first with the mages. And again, before I go, this tier list is by myself, Apans, as well as Junior. We put this together a good while back, and we've been updating it as we go. Just before this, we discussed where Lucia will be. We still need more time with her, but we wanted to give her a temporary placement. But she's gonna probably stay there, in all honesty. So we'll start with Yulvian. I hate saying his actual full name. I think he's still at the top of mages when it comes to damage and just general, usefulness, I guess. Him and Osh are both pretty much the same place that they were. I do have a 10-star Yulv, so I have more experience with him now. I do not use him as much as I thought I would. I still gravitate more towards Ram and my Felix by a mile. He sort of comes in when he needs to be, clutch. The damage is generally fairly high. If my Ram is doing 22 million, he's doing maybe 17. So that's an example from one of the fights I had earlier today. So he's not bad. He's not good, not bad at all. Don't get it wrong. If I sound like I'm sort of going against him, he's good. Still pretty much a top tier mage. The one I would say more towards though is Sinclair. Sinclair seems to have a lot of good uses. Obviously, his ability to heal, support the team with attack speed, is just really really strong. So if you are looking for a more universal mage, then I would probably go for Sinclair because he can buff whoever else you have, regardless of his star level. I believe it's all percentages. So if you're gonna have him at 10 star, he's going to be pretty much as strong as he's going to be at 11, because percentage stats obviously will have an effect, but it's from the allies' percentage stats, and obviously 35% attack speed is just 35% attack speed. So he's really good to get if you are a free-to-play player and you don't have a lot of light food and you have minimal copies. In a lot of cases, a 7-star Sinclair, if you can keep him alive, will do his job, and if you can get him to 9, 10 star, he's going to stay alive to do that. So he's really, really worth it. Atches is someone who's basically just a super support unit for mages. Him and Frode are pretty much brilliant when it comes to doing their thing. They're not the ones to rely for damage. Basically, you just get them as support mages. I've said before in my food video that I believe that someone like Frode and even Atches can be left till later games, so you can potentially even food them more so Frode than Atches. But yeah, so if you are essentially looking for a good supportive mage and you want them to benefit from your mage guild tech and any other aspect of your sort of mage related stuff like crystal, Frode is going to do well for you. Milton, we recently discovered, not myself, but some people, he's basically the highest dealing damage unit in the Abyss. That's through the runes that I've discussed in the rune video, so he's very, very strong. He's going to be an okay unit in most situations because he does have high damage, and that's pretty much what you want from a mage, and it's what's going to show you that he's a strong unit. When he uses his abilities, you're going to see, right? that he does a lot of damage. So that's the first thing you see when you see a strong healer. You're going to notice someone like Margaret who's going to be doing a shit ton of healing, and you'd be like, okay, well, she's a good healer. You don't really see the extra little bits, but for Milton, he has nothing extra to really offer. All he has is high damage, and he's good generally. If you have Milton, you can power him up. He's going to do well for you. Doris is a middle tier mage, as we see here with the text. We slotted her in. I slotted her in pretty quickly to about. I put her here as a picture just to sort of give myself an indication of where I would be roughly putting her. And it's pretty much stayed the same. There's some people that kind of like her. Some people, but no one says that she's tier 1. No one says that she's high tier 2, for example. It's pretty much in the situation of where she places herself around Frode, Milton, Doris. That this trio here is just basically, to some people, just like, oh, it's the middle, and she's somewhere here in the middle. And I agree. I tested her out. I was interested in powering her up. After some time and some testing, I realized I don't like her, so I never did. I don't have a single copy of her actually, although I now have one Lucia, and I'll be aiming to get 10 Lucias, or 8 Lucias eventually. So that's something to note for when I get to the priests. Gisela is still here. She's good. She's not. I mean, I would say she's okay. She's decent. She's not bad. She's not great. Her CC skill may be starting to lack compared to some other units. I just feel like it's not. It's really good and targeted, and you can play around it really, really well. And obviously, stopping a unit like Yasuko from silencing your team can make a big difference. But she's going to be placed in a similar spot to someone like, Grigor, where it may be a bit more niche to use her. So that's something to note. And Ragnar and Primo are in tier 3, and that's just, I think, how it's going to stay. Ragnar just doesn't do enough, and Primo just does nothing. I'll say it now, he just basically does nothing. Moving on to Rangers. I don't want to take too long with this because we've discussed most of these before, but for anyone stumbling upon it, then I do want to go ahead and give some detail to it. Okay, so I'm going to say that my Felix and Celia are still the top 2 rangers. I think both of them are interchangeable. Celia does more damage in Abyss than Felix. I feel like Felix just generally does a bit more potentially in all the other aspects, or equal to Celia. I think they are fine as staying as where they are because you can move either one around. As an example, I think I like Celia's design as a character. I find it cooler, but I think I would generally want to use Felix because I feel like the combination of Felix's raining arrows as well as something like a Ramil works really, really well, or a Terrence works really, really well because you have them tanking in the back line, gathering up the enemies, and then Felix just goes ahead and ult, and then they spin and they die. So it's a find that really, really, really strong. Celia buffs herself up. She's really strong. She's the second highest damage, I believe, in the Abyss at the moment. So that's to note too. One thing I would want to say is my personal. I don't think this is across the 3 of us making this tier list, but I think I would personally place Diana about the same point as Tel. I use her more commonly than I use Tel. I will say that now, and I use Liv more commonly than I use Tel. I don't know if I just have a liking towards them more so, but I feel like Tel maybe isn't tier 1. This is something that obviously you can take as a yes or a no from me, because obviously there's 3 people combining their total knowledge and experience to put the list together. So if one of us believes someone is higher but the other 2 believe they are not, it's going to remain as not. But I think Tel and Diana are equal as a top of tier 2. I just don't. I see the damage from Tel, but I see my Diana doing a lot of damage too. Obviously, depends who dies first and so on, but I think I would generally put them the same. But it does mean that basically every single ranger in the tier 2 is just great, right? They're perfect units. If you were to remove Felix and Celia, then those would be the tier 1s, and I don't think you would even say anything bad about it when you're, if you didn't have the other ones to compare to. Moving down to tier 3. I recently built my Darby up to 12 star. She's okay. She's not great. She sometimes does a lot. Sometimes she does nothing. It's very weird to me. It feels like she should be able to be in the tier 2. And I guess that's the sort of RNG aspect of who's dying first, and if she's able to ult when she gets the boost and stuff like that. So it's odd for me, but she's okay, right? She's not the worst. She's not the best. She's viable enough to build her, and you can play around her abilities to make her into a tier 2 ranger, but it's a lot more work compared to something like Liv, who's just going to generally do a lot more consistently. Brooke and Edward are both rangers that I do not like them. Brooke is someone who I may consider down the line when I'm starting to run out of rangers. I have to do my Rennie before I am now left with only Brooke and Edward to do, if you ignore Celia. So maybe, eventually, potentially, the silences could be great, but yeah, these are just going to stay at this tier 3. Priests. Okay, so Olivia, Margaret, and Flora are just all 3 great, amazing priests. Those are the main healer priests. Pretty much no one really can compare to their healing abilities. Margaret is ridiculous. She's the one that allows for like 140 million damage done in PvE stages, because she just keeps healing any damage that you do. You can have 2 attack damage dealers hitting somebody like a tank, or not even a tank sometimes, like an off tank, and they stay alive, and they just stay there for a solid minute whacking each other, doing millions of damage, hundreds of millions of damage in totality, and she's just able to sustain it. Olivia's buffs are amazing, the support is great, and same goes for Flora. I think Flora is like a bit like a lesser version of Olivia, but and the lesser version of Margaret, which is why she's below the 2, but she's still really, really good and 100% recommended. Of course, you're going to want to get a good priest when you go into the Endless for the Forest faction, and she's just a great, great choice. I used her as basically like a budget Margaret. Whenever I can't use Margaret, maybe if I have 3 enemy teams to face, I use Flora, and she does perfect for me. And the damage sometimes surprises me. Sometimes she does 10 million damage with a Reflect, which is interesting. Suvir is another tier 1. I put it on a different position than I would the 3, because Suvir is very, very different to basically every single priest. I had the idea that Lucia would maybe take the position of Suvir or be in the same sort of category, but that's just not the case. Suvir just does a good chunk of damage. Support is there. The healing is but she does fine. She's 100% still a tier 1. She creeped up from tier 2 when we last time did the tier list, and now she's basically sitting in tier 1, and she's doing well. So yeah. Let's move on to tier 2, which I think is what you guys would want to know, as Lucia is a new character that's just released, and you want to maybe know where she would place. So Lucia is a bit of an interesting one. We all are in agreement that Lucia is not tier 1. I don't think anyone in the beta that's been playing her, that knows her, would say she's a tier 1 unit. I guess it's also good for the game, the fact that not every priest is tier 1, but I guess it could also be good for the game if they were, because then you wouldn't have to, you can just build whoever you want to, or fill any issues that you have. So Lucia, basically top of tier 1. I'd say for me, rather interchangeable with Waga. She just does a different thing. She amps the damage up of the team towards certain enemies, provides a healing effect, which is great. The damage really lackluster. Generally, I wouldn't run her for damage. I tried it. It's just not much damage at all. She's good in the Abyss, so that's something big to note. Waga and Grigor are basically very niche, supportive priests. You wouldn't have them as main healers. I find Grigor to be the best option sometimes in certain stages where I need to ult first, or the enemy just ults right after. So, yeah, I will say that, generally Grigor is just niche. Same goes for Waga. You just use him when you are stuck and you need more energy. But usually I use Grigor. I would use Grigor over Waga, in all honesty. Assassins, this is unchanged from before. You have Ramil and Gar at the top. I will say now that I have them both powered up, Ramil is better than Gar. Maybe not in PvP, but I think even in PvP they're the same. I think Gar can surprise you with his ability in PvP, but Ramil just is so consistent in every aspect of the game. He's my main assassin now in every single of the faction towers. He's generally my main assassin in the campaign. He's one of my better damage dealers in Abyss. He performs really well in wars, able to beat teams considerably stronger than my teams. So he's just really, really strong. Having both of them, I can easily say so. Terrence is still a really strong unit. One thing he lacks is the energy power up, which is what makes it worse to use than something like Ram. Ram gives himself energy, which is amazing. But obviously Terrence not having that does mean that sometimes I just can't use Terrence, because if the enemy ults at the same time my Terrence does, I just feel like I can't win the battle because the enemy will kill me and I won't kill the enemy. So that's a bit of an issue. I'd say Barley is amazing in the Abyss. He's doing so much damage with the combo. Again, check the rune page video to see exactly sort of what to use on him to make him a beast in the Abyss. Sota I find to be sort of like a middle guy. He does fine every time I face him. He's okay. He's not a big problem. I think if you are looking for a Legion Assassin, just build him. Again, he is the best Legion Assassin because there's only one of him. So I love saying that because it's so kind of funny. We need some more Legion Assassins, I think, because we have so many undead, and at least we have a very solid one for Forest. But he's good. Moving on to Bella in Beelzebub. Bella, I think the only redeeming grace for her is her usefulness in Guild War, because she can lock down one enemy. It does mean that she, get it helps a hell of a lot when it's a 3v3 situation, when you lock off 1/3 of their power. Beelzebub is a unit that can be okay if you put a lot of love into him, get him the right gear, put him in all your artifacts, so on and so forth. Then he can actually do something. But generally, it takes too much love to get him to a stage where he's basically sitting at about here. So it's not really worth it compared to like leveling up Barley, Sota, or Terrence, of course, or any of the LS. The last page we're looking at now is the tank page. Tank page again is unchanged. Lionel, Eric, and Cardilin are pretty much the top tanks when it comes to just generally around the game, ignoring some very niche uses of units like Yasuko. I personally put Cardilin above Eric, and I put Lionel at the top. So I would have it Lionel, Cardilin, Eric, but the general consensus between the three of us is that Eric is better than Cardilin, so we kept it like that. But they're both interchangeable. They're both just as good as one another in a lot of situations. I just find my Cardilin lasts a lot longer because of his revive. It means you don't have to put your Margaret revive on Eric, or the Flora passive on Eric to keep him going. So Yasuko, Katarina are really, really strong in PvP. I find him very frustrating to play against in the Guild War, so they're not bad units at all. Renaud is a good option as just a sort of secondary tank, but he's not the best. Alright, and then next we have Patras, Norton, Isla, and Seth, who are essentially just very meh units, at least for a long, long time. I think you have to put a lot of love into someone like Isla with block chances to actually make her good. Seth is just garbage. I wouldn't play him. They basically changed him to have more damage, but he's not able to tank, so he's just sort of a weird side guy. Patras can be okay, I guess, in Guild War. Same for Norton if you're just looking for an extra tank, but he's not on top of my list. The next thing I want to talk about very, very, very briefly, this is something that we started working on and we sort of left it for a moment, but we'll come back to it as we go. But it's basically the tier list for Abyss damage. We have Milton, Celia at the top, Felix, Diana, Barley, Ram, Gar, Rennie, and Tell at A, Terrence, Liv, and Sota at B. Did I say Sota up here? But anyway, this is here. You can see a picture. And then these are sort of the rest of the units for the damage. I thought you'd just leave it here so you guys can take a brief look. Someone, for example, like Darby just can't have units die to power her up, so she's bad. Silences from Brook don't work. He doesn't have the best damage. Beelzebub, you need a combo to make him B. Most of these units will be stronger if you give them a combo if they're a damage dealer, but this is just a rough sort of look, and you can read here as well. Some of these damage numbers are just due to Berserk and Repulse Rune. So some units go up a tier compared to units that don't have them on just because of the combo. Alright, well, I'm going to leave it here. Again, these guys are just my opinions as well as two other people. If you like a unit, build them, but generally this is basically a rough opinion on what we think between the three of us. As we go, this document is on the Discord for the game, so you can take a look at it yourself if any changes happen. Every so often I update it, move things around, change any text that I feel like maybe needs some changing. But this is basically the placement for Lucia. You can basically argue that she's in the same position as Waga, and Waga's above her, Waga's below. But anytime you have a hero that is kind of niche, it becomes a bit complicated trying to place them, because you try and think of the best moments to use Waga. I just think Lucia is a bit more universal. So yeah, I'll leave it here. I hope it was helpful. Basically, the tier list to take us into 2022. Any new heroes that do come, we'll update it again. Do keep, like I said, do keep a lookout on the Discord to see exactly if anything has changed. All right, hopefully that helped. Bye bye.